you feeling stuck, lost, tired, or uninspired? We've all been there, including myself. I'm Coach Des, mindset motivator and lifestyle entrepreneur. I'm here to tell you that the best, unapologetic, and limitless version of yourself is yet to come. The Born Unbreakable podcast is here to inspire just that. With motivating guests from all different walks of life and around the world, their stories will empower you to unlock abundance and your unbreakable spirit. Do you need accountability? Reach out to me for a free consultation of how I can support you in reaching your maximum potential. This episode is brought to you by Korma Date Coffee, the healthy alternative to coffee. This delicious date coffee has the health benefits of giving you natural energy, antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Best of all, Korma is caffeine-free, no jitters, no anxiety, and no afternoon crash. Go to kormacafe.com, that's KORMACAFE.com, and enter discount code BORNUNBREAKABLE at checkout to get 10% off your order. Welcome to the Born Unbreakable podcast and 2022. This episode is the first episode of the new year. And for me, that is really special. It's basically going into this new space with positive energy. And if this is the first time that you're tuning into this podcast, maybe you just decided, hey, I'm going to see what's going on in the podcast world this year, and you chose Born Unbreakable. I want to thank you for being here. If you have been with me through the journey, I want to thank you too for coming back and joining me and my special guest today, because you are in for a real treat. I have so much respect for Anthony Pierre, what he's doing, and we're going to learn more about that. But let me tell you a little bit about Anthony. So Anthony is many things. He's a real estate investor. He's an author of the book Boundless Success, which you should go check out on Amazon. He is a motivational speaker and a minister, and he is really focused on empowerment. And that's exactly what we're going to get today. His mission is to help others to change their mindset and work over fear of failure, which we're going to talk about. And he hails from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yes.
So we're representing, I'm over here in Las Vegas, Nevada. He's in Cincinnati, Ohio. And it's funny, Anthony, one of the first consulting projects that I had was in Cincinnati.
Oh, wow.
And I love the experience of being there. I got exposed to what it was like to be in the snow in the winter over there. And the West Coast is a little different.
Oh, absolutely.
Is it snowing now?
Yeah.
So you know,
but it snowed the other day, and my wife, she's actually from Kenya, Africa. So she's used to it being nice and warm. So this was, just her second year dealing with the winters here in Ohio. So of course she's like at the window taking pictures and stuff, but it melted already. But yeah, it snowed yesterday and it was there for a second and now it's gone. But yes, we're in that season right now.
Yeah, tis the season for some of these weather changes and life changes. Like I said, we're blessed to be here, and I learned about your story, and I would love, one of the things when we think about a new year and moving forward is the high points, right?
Yeah.
The possibilities, the things that we're looking forward to, and we're setting goals. But we can't appreciate things like success if we don't admire where we've come from.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that got us here and the things that we've learned from. And I know in your journey, one of the experiences that you've had was spending time in prison and having time to reflect on what that all meant. So I would love for us to go back to that time before we talk about the Anthony today and what you learned from that experience.
Okay, well, absolutely. Well, once again, thank you for having me. It's actually an honor to be here. And we talked a little bit earlier. We were just talking about our lives, and how we're just living in a different time, and and things shift and change, and for some people it's been an extremely difficult adjustment. And that takes me back to when I ran into my situation, which happened back in 2009. That was like a shift. That was like a change beyond what I could imagine. Because prior to that, I had been pretty successful at real estate investing. Had been investing at that time for I don't know how many years, since probably 1998 or so. Once I came out of college is when I started investing, and I've been an entrepreneur, all my life. I've always owned my own business, and I always had the pleasure of being able to be with my kids. I was always the parent that was at the events, and my kids would come to me to go on all the field trips. So I look forward to that. And at that time when I had caught this case, I had four beautiful children. My youngest daughter was two, Amaya. My oldest daughter, Courtney, at that time was 16, and she was going through that phase in her life, of course, which was an amazing time for her, because everybody can't wait to turn 16, right? Especially young ladies. So that was a really good time for her. And then my sons were both 8 and 10, Anthony and Aiden and Anthony. So this was just like a shock to my entire family. And a lot of people wonder, like, well, what happened? You go from being a successful real estate investor. When I first started out, me and my brother, I mean, we ended up buying what we bought like 17 houses in 4 months, and end up putting $500,000 in our pocket, and purchasing more than $2.5 million in real estate, and blew this business up. And then all of a sudden, less than maybe 10 or so years later, I find myself facing 22 years in prison. And the thing that really I had to reflect on at that moment is that I really had to look at my life. Because one of the things that I always talk about is that we're all victims of our environment and the things that we grew up and that we see. And a lot of times we see things in our lives that we should never see. And it almost breaks my heart, especially when you look at young kids coming up in these horrible environments and seeing things and being around things that now starts to kind of be the norm. And for me, although I had broke away from my environment and went off and played college football, and then I ended up coming out and graduating from college, and then also opening a business. But my I still was tied to my environment. I still had most of my friends were still selling drugs and doing stuff like that, and wasn't really doing anything. And I almost felt an obligation to reach down, to always help in any kind of way that I could. And I was always that guy that people came to for help. So it was just natural to me. So if someone came to me and said, "Man, I need help, this, that, how can you help me?" A lot of times, I'm gonna try to see what I can do to help. And sometimes it may be outside of the rules, so to speak. And then this was the situation for this. I had a really, really close childhood friend that was in a bind. And just to tell you a little bit about the story between me and this individual, is that, you know, the irony of the situation is when we were young, we always ran together as kids. And one time we end up getting, caught skipping school. And we get brought into the principal office, and I'm sitting in one room, and he's sitting in another room. And one of our teachers came in, I guess, to see, I guess, to scold us or whatever. So teacher comes in, and she goes over to me first, and she says, "What are you doing?" She just goes off on me. This is that. You never should have been this. You never should. I mean, she just kind of scolded me, right? And I'm like, man, okay, you know. And then she went over to the other room, and for some reason, I could hear it. And in the other room, she went to him, and she says, why are you hanging with Anthony? He don't have a future. This is not gonna happen. He comes from, I mean, just really just saying all these horrible things about me, and I'm listening. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, who she thinks she is? What does she mean I don't have a future? What do you know? So as a kid, at this time, I'm in my, I don't know, I'm close to being maybe 13, 14 at this time, maybe. I mean, I don't even think I'm probably 12. I'm not even at that age. I'm young still. So I'm listening. I'm like, what does she mean by that? So instantly, that was like one of the first pivots in my life that made me say, you know what? Like, she don't know me. Let me prove her wrong.
Mm.
So from that moment on, it changed my mind shift. So that my mindset instantly, and that was like the first time that I noticed it in my life. Didn't know what it was until later on that it was a mind shift change. But it was just like, okay, let me prove you wrong. What do you mean? You know what? I really don't like studying. I really don't. I hate school. I don't like these books. But guess what? Because you said that, give me this math book. Let me sit down here. Let me work these things. So, long story short, this was when I was in the sixth grade. So I end up getting straight A's from that point on. And I end up getting on honor roll and everything for the first time ever in my life. And just out of spite to the teacher, and this is just show you my mentality, I end up not showing up to the ceremony. I skipped school, and I did it on purpose. And I skipped and went with the older kids in the seventh, eighth grade on a field trip and snuck on the trip. And of course, I ended up getting caught. So it became a big thing at the school. Also became a big thing in school that, hey, he got all these A's and he had all these things, and then he didn't show up for his whatever. So, but the point of it is that me and this individual was really close. So we grew up together, and it was my hope that, he would eventually go off and do some amazing things. Unfortunately, he ended up getting, caught up in the street world. And that's kind of what it did. End up not graduating from high school and all. It kind of was in and out and trouble and all that. And was extremely a talented student. I mean, he was getting great A's and doing really great in school at that time. So, you would only think that he would have been an amazing, student and going to do some amazing things, but his mind shift too. So even given that praise, he took it and boom, he went the total opposite way. And one of the reasons why I went off to college and got out and even tried to get him to leave with me, like, man, come to college, man. Let's just go down here to college. He like, nah, I need to do what I'm doing. So, take care of my family, whatever. So I go off to college. I do what I do. He goes off and whatever. Now, fast forward, I come out. All of a sudden, I blow this company up, become, this big investor. And also, I own one of the first minority owned mortgage lenders in the tri state, Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio. So we were impacting and changing people's lives in a lot of different ways. Most of all my family and friends, their first homes and stuff like that came through our company, helping them get financed and get their houses. So, and even his mom and dad also, I even helped them get their house and stuff like that as well. So, I was like here, doing these things, and then he was kind of like the black sheep, and he was like over here doing what he ain't really supposed to be doing. So he was in a jam, and he came to me, and I have helped him before, which I probably should have never did. And that's really what the issue was. In this case, he was like really down. I said, man, I really need something to happen. Can you help me out? I end up owning a building in Chicago, and I usually go down there every year. And what happened is he asked me, and I said, you know what? All right, man, I'll stop. And I knew the guys anyway. I said, I'll pick that up for you, and I'll bring it back on my way to help him because he was in a really, really bad bind. He really needed it to happen. So I did it, but didn't know that he was being investigated, didn't know that they were looking at all this stuff. So when I get it back, I get stopped, and boom, my whole life changed. And now I get caught with this illegal contraband in my vehicle. And now I'm facing 22 years in prison out of nowhere. And just like it always happens, almost like a movie, all of a sudden I became the center of attention. They started coming after all my assets. They started saying that, hey, this is probably the ringleader. He's probably the guy that's the orchestrating it, or he's the one that may be laundering the money of this organization over here. And so they came after all my things, took all my things. Matter of fact, even before I even got convicted, took my cars, even sold my stuff, which was, I didn't even think that was even possible. But it was just like one of the lowest periods in my life because I worked so hard to get to this point, and I had not even had a juvenile record at that time. I was a little bad kid, but once I turned it around, I was on the up and up. So now I'm looking at 22 years in prison. So they come to me with a proposition that says, hey, we really want these guys over here. So if you will help us and talk, we will give you community service. Now, what community service is probation. So meaning that I could have walked out and went and left. And if I would have just told on him, everybody else that I knew, or any other people that I knew, and even friends that I known for years, that was that. But I'm gonna be honest with you, dads, is that you know street code is great, and some street codes we probably shouldn't even uphold. But for me, it was less about snitching or telling. If I see a murder and somebody get killed, of course I would, without a doubt, I'm saying, report that. But in this case, it was like I was already caught. I was already in trouble. And how I look at it is that punish me for what I did. Okay, I made a huge mistake. So I'll take responsibility. I did it out of, I was not being coerced. I made this decision, so punish me. But I refuse to ruin another man's life or 5 or 6 or 7 other people's life. Maybe this may impact and shift their minds and change the way that they're looking at it because they see me up here and then I go all the way down here. And then also the fact of the matter that I'm not willing, what I'm saying, to not take responsibility. I'm not going to walk out of here and then ruin 8 or 9 other people's lives. And then every day I'm living my life free, what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And then their kids and their families and everything is messed. No. So I said the buck stops here. So whatever you have for me, give to me or whatever. So ultimately I end up getting they end up, negotiating and them giving me 6 years in prison. And even though I had never been in trouble. So this was horrible for me. It was hard for my family. Uh, one of the worst times in my life. I was always strong. Even my father had passed when I was 17. Like I never even cried, because I seen so many other people hurting and pain, my mother and everyone. I just felt like I had to be strong for everyone. But like this issue was one of the things that I had never, because I felt for the first time as like a failure. I felt for the first time that I was the most selfish person on the planet because I had these 4 beautiful children that was here. And now, they were supposed to come with me that weekend and now I'm locked up. And I never got back out. Because they took my assets. I had no access to be able to get out. They made my bond super high. It was just ridiculous. But I had never really cried about anything at that point since I was a little kid. This was like the first time. The crazy thing about this is that I was sitting in court, and when I decided to take the 6 years, I'm sitting in court and I look back and I see all my family. I see all these faces. And the judge had asked me after she gave me 6 years, she says, Anthony, we see what you've done in society. We understand this, that. You have taken this plea. Is there anything that you want to say? And I started to talk, and for the first time in I don't know how many years, man, I started to cry. I mean, tears just I couldn't even get the words out. And it was such a shock to everyone because I'm trying to just thank my family, for their support, but I'm like crying. I'm like, and I'm looking back and I'm crying and I'm just telling them, I just want to thank them, for their support and always being there for me, whatever. And I'm doing this in tears. So afterwards, I just tell you this little story. Afterwards, they supposed to take me back. I'm like in chains and everything, and they supposed to take me back to the prison. So on my way, the my family was going out, which was a sweet CO that was taking me back. She says, "Hey, do you want to say something to your family?" And I was like, oh, absolutely. So she actually allowed me to talk to my family. They always able to come over to me, say hello, and this, that. And, I have a real, a loving family, but I also have a silly family too. And all of a sudden, everybody walk up, everybody hugging me, whatever. And then my little sister walks up and she says, bruh, I don't think I've seen you cry and I don't know how many years. She was like, I was sitting there shocked, like to see you cry, whatever. So we hugged and everything. And we laughed about it. And that was like one of those moments that was like, just meaningful to me because it was like the family's there. And then she did something that really she's not even allowed to do. She allowed me to see my family. And, before that, I was off the prison. So that was kind of leading up to that point, me in prison, and now I'm having to deal with the psychology of being in prison, never being in prison, and then trying to figure out how to protect my mental health. Because
Mhm.
what I noticed is that one or two things happen when you go to prison. either you're going to go in a better person or you're going to come out a worse person. There's no in between. You will never be the same when you leave prison, but you have a choice. You can come out and be better, or you can come out and be an even worse person. And that's usually what you see tend to happen. And that's why you see people tend to continue to go back to prison, because they buy into the idea that this is all life has for them. So now they go into prison and they start working on trying to be a better a better criminal. I can do it better this time. If I didn't do X, Y, Z, then this wouldn't have happened and that would have happened, Or if I did this, so they start, thinking about how they could have not got caught versus thinking about, okay, this whole ideal is screwed up, and the ideal that I'm having to break the law. Is there a better way, and can I change my life, and can I find another way to provide for my family? So that's the two things that I noticed. So for me, I was dealing with this idea that I was a failure, and I started to start questioning that word, like, well, what is failure? Are you really a failure? And you know, I taught one of my daughter's mom had said something to me while I was actually, she was a CO. So when I was locked up, she had called in through the PA, and while I was locked up the next day after I got locked up, because she worked down at the county, and all of a sudden I hear this voice like, Tony, like, who was that? She was like, it's me, Andrea. I says, what are you doing? She's like, you locked up, and I'm trying to find out what's going on, what happened, So we talked or whatever, but she said something that really changed me. She says, look, no matter what happens, just know this, that your daughter will have, because my daughter was 2 at the time. She says, your daughter will have a relationship with you. You will see her. We will be there with you no matter what. That is my word. And I was just like, wow. So at that time, it made me really start to think like, well, are you really a failure? And what is the word failure? So one of the things that I realized when I started really questioning that word, the idea to fail, it has to stop. So, like, if you had a radio that failed, it quits. It no longer works. Whereas, so for something to fail, it has to stop. So, in all actuality, as long as you breathing, you're not a failure. As long as you're pushing forward, you're not a failure. So this was a reality to me. And then, of course, at that time too, I started really getting spiritual, really started studying, really started reading the Bible, really started looking at, what God perspective was on us and how he viewed us as well. And one thing I noticed is that in the Bible, the word failure is never mentioned. And never at one point in time has he called one human a failure. So that in itself made me change the way that I thought and said, you know what, I'm not a failure. Now I made a mistake, but I'm not a failure. So, and I have not stopped, and I'm not going to stop. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm actually going to change the way that I looked at things. So one of the mind shifts that I made, I says, well, look, I did 5 years in college. So this is 6 years. I can do 6 years here, as long as I approach it from an educational standpoint. Let me learn. Let me learn about who I am. What even made me make this decision? Why would I make a decision like that? And I just really started to search in me. And what it did is it made me strip down butt naked. I had to actually really look at myself. I had to be honest with myself. And I had to realize that you are here because of you. Your decision that you made, irregardless, yeah, did they illegally stop me? Yeah, did they do all these illegal things? Did they break the law to uphold the law? Yes, they did. But that has nothing to do with me. That has everything to do with them, and they have to deal with that if they continue to do that. But for me, I should have never been in that situation. So that's what I had to look at. So I finally took responsibility, what I'm saying, for my actions. And I just realized, like, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can for my children from here. And that's all I can do. And one of my favorite characters in the Bible was King David. Why? Because King David did a lot of things that he screwed up, man. He screwed up big time. He committed adultery. He had a son that turned on him, and he was forced out of his kingdom. But one thing he said that really made me really appreciate him is that when he was actually faced with the ideal of what he had did to his to Bathsheba's husband, he said something to the prophet, which always just touched my heart, is that after the prophet told him that, hey, you did this thing, and showed him that we know that God know that you did this thing. First, he repented, but the other thing he did is that he turned to God and he pleaded with God to not take his spirit away, and which is his favor, because he realized at that moment that God had given him so much favor. So now he realized that I just done threw this whole thing to the side. He done blessed me so much. I got 4 wives. Why do I need to take someone else? I done committed murder and all that. So it was like it was on him, right? So then now he realized the most important thing, which was his relationship with God. So he fought for that versus anything else. And that right there
Mhm.
really touched my heart, because sometimes I think we are fighting for everything else, but are we really fighting for our relationship with God? Do we still want that favor? Do we still want him to bless us and really help us and continue to be there for us despite some of the ridiculous things and stupid things and mistakes that we make each and every day? And he continues to forgive us, but we will fight for that relationship. It's one thing for God to forgive you, but it's another thing to fight for the relationship with him. And that's what I saw with David, and that's what David did. And the one thing that I noticed with David too is that God did not stop what was going to happen due to the outcome of his decision. He was going to have to pay the consequence for his decision, but God did continue to give him favor. So the consequences was, yes, he got ran out of his kingdom. His son and maybe family lost a lot of respect for him. His son ended up, taking his wife, his concubines, and being intimate with him and stuff, all these things. So for me, on a spiritual perspective, that was powerful. That really helped me, and it made me really become open, and it removed a veil from my eyes, and I started to see people. Because it's one thing when you're young and you start making a lot of money and stuff like that, sometimes you don't see people. Sometimes you may be arrogant. Sometimes you may think you something more than what you really are. And I realized that I was none of that, and for me to even think for a second that I might be something is ridiculous, because the only thing that we have really is our word, and our relationship, I'm saying, with our creator, and what we doing with our lives. So that's really all you got, and how you live in your life, whether you living it bad or whatever. So that's all you have. So I realized, like, you know what, I have to change the way that I live my life. I have to let my no mean no and my yes mean yes. And I have to now start a new me and just build from there. And that's what I did. I just stripped myself down. It was like the most humbling thing. It was hard. It was hard to look at my life. It was hard to look at all the things. It was hard to really ask for forgiveness for everything I've done that was probably bad, and really mean it. And then it was actually difficult to actually act in harmony with your actual prayers, because we tend to want these things, but sometimes we don't act in harmony with it. So I started to do that, and I ended up getting baptized, becoming an ordained minister, and I really started helping inmates in there. So literally, I was the guy that everyone came to. We talk about, they want to come on the yard, we'll walk, we'll talk about their problems. So my time went like this because it was no longer about me. Matter of fact, I don't even think I've really ever talked much about my case, but a lot of people knew who I was because of the real estate stuff. But as the spiritual person, they really, love that, because they actually had an outlet, somebody who was willing to talk to them, somebody who wouldn't judge them, somebody who would just walk to them and allow them to get it out what they was dealing with, and then also give them comfort from
Mhm.
the scriptures. It's 4 things that the scriptures did for me, and I'm not saying this to tell anyone
Mhm.
religious or what it is, but it did for me. And one thing is that it gave me instruction. The other thing that it did is that it actually helped me to endure. And then the third thing that it did is that it gave me comfort, because it showed me I wasn't a failure. It showed me that I could be whatever I wanted to be, and that God is with me. He's going to always be there for me. He's going to always help me, as long as I'm willing to fight for my relationship with Him. And then lastly, the fourth thing is it gave me hope. I had something to hope for now, So that,
Anthony,
yes.
you are like about to make me cry right
I'm
now.
sorry.
I
That is not
just
my intention.
I Oh my gosh, but it's your vulnerability and your openness to share from your heart this experience and everything that you've learned from it is so, it's palpable and it's so powerful, because what you're sharing is a version of something that we all go through, I think, in one of the most extreme versions of it. I mean, people that aren't in prison have a choice, more choices about where they wake up and what they do and how they do it. And you were limited, but you chose not to think in a limited way, and some of the things that I'm taking from your story is, one, acceptance, because part of being having peace with ourselves, which is, I think, the number one person that we battle the most. It's not
Hmm.
the world, it's not the other people in your life, it's you. And when you can make peace with the mistakes, with the decisions that you make, that's step one. But I think the important part of what else you shared is accountability, responsibility, ownership. And when you do that, that's where the learning, that's where the growth can happen. And there's always a crossroad that we have, because I never really thought about it the way that you described it. And I can understand hearing it from you that you can either come out better or you can come out worse. And I have a lot of family who work in the prison system, as a police officer, sergeant, tech, a tech that checks in the inmates and all kinds of different things. And it's a you don't hear too many of the good stories. I'll put it that way.
Hmm.
You're not hearing the success cases. I hear more of the, oh yeah, no, most of the people they see again, most of the people are back, and to the point where they know them well, they know their story, and not beyond that, they expect them to come back. They
Hmm.
expect that this is a pattern, and when you leave, there is a place right back here for you. And that breaks my heart. And hearing you helps me, and hopefully anybody who's listening know that there always is a different choice. It might not be the common choice, but there's always a different choice, and the choice is yours. And that's our uh, responsibility, to pick which path that you're going to go down.
No, I know, I agree, and
We're always
and
faced
that's
with
the
that.
thing that I learned. I mean, that was the biggest thing. So one of the things that I did do is, I started, preaching and teaching and helping people. But another thing is, I had a bunkie who wanted to learn how to invest in real estate. And he was like, you know what, I've heard about you. And he says, I've been hearing all these things and I really want to get learn how to invest in real estate. So I says, okay, well, let me think about how I'm gonna do that, because I was a different person now. I've been in prison now for a couple of years, and I started changing the way that I looked at things. And I didn't have that same, oh, I'll by any means necessary, and that rah rah rah, you get rich, and that type of thing that you see on a lot on TV and a lot of these coaches, and you want to make millions of dollars and you want to do this and do that. And I mean, that's the hype, and that's the thing that they do, to kind of get people. But me, I says, nah, I need something raw and uncut and just real. So that way, if I teach this person, I'm able to not only teach him from financial standpoint, but I'm also to teach him from a spiritual standpoint in terms of changing his heart, changing the way he thinks. So that way, when he gets out and I teach him these things, he can utilize them and never have to sell drugs again, and never have to, something that I probably should have done before I even made my decision, which would have benefited my friend more than me trying to help him continue to do better at what he was doing, which was already illegal there, instead of creating something that would have been beneficial, that he could have went through a program or something. So I ended up telling him, I says, look, his name is Cook, and he's doing amazing right now. But I says, Cook, I says, hey, here's what I'll do. I says, I'll sit down and teach you for 1 hour a week. I says, but the only thing I want you to do is that I want you, when you're at the auto school, I want you to type everything up. I said, because you got access to a computer. I didn't. He was allowed to go out of the prison, and he worked at the auto school, and they had computers. So I said, so I want you to just type it up. And he was like, oh, absolutely. I'll type it up, whatever you need. So I says, all right, cool. So I said, let's start. When you want to start? He's like, this weekend, Sunday. I was like, all right, well, let's go. So we started then. And for 8 months, I sat down with him and another gentleman, and I taught him 4 phases to becoming a successful real estate investor. And in this, I taught them banking, finance, taught them all the real estate strategies, taught them about their credit, taught them about corporations setting up their businesses and how to set up their business and take advantage of government grants and things when they get out, and free money and all these things that I had the pleasure of being able to do and understood. So I teach him this course. And then he ended up, taking that course, typing it all up. And then now I had the blueprint. So before you know it, I had 4 or 5 other people wanting to learn, sat down, taught another group of guys. And then after teaching the second group of guys, the third group seemed to be super big. And it was like, I was like, man, I had the CEOs coming around like, Anthony, what you doing? Got all these guys around here. And I said, hey, I'm teaching them, so finally the principal reached out. A friend reached out to tell me to reach out to the principal. I reached out to the principal. The principal said, hey, I've been hearing about your program. It's amazing. She was like, I don't have room in a school. She says, but let me introduce you to the director of education for Urbana University and see if they actually have room in the college. So she introduced me to the director. The director loved the program and then gave me space. And I ended up having a program where they can actually get certified by completing the class, which I created a 16-week course. And I taught it twice a semester. And on average, in the colleges, in prison, on average, it's about 10 to 15 students in a class on average. In my classes, it was 35 to 40 students in each session. I had to have them bring in 20 something plus chairs just to teach. And at that point in time, I was able to not only impact a lot of people's lives by teaching them real estate, but I learned so much about people. And I really realized that even our prison system, we could have it go away if we wanted it to, because the real problem is really capitalism. It's not necessarily a real problem with, some of the things that people are doing. Like, most of them in there are nonviolent. Most of the inmates are nonviolent. Most of them in for like drugs and selling drugs or taking drugs or whatever it is. And those are usually chemical imbalances. Those are usually vices, or even also may even be real illnesses, because when you start doing drugs, that's an illness in itself. So whatever the case is, and so this is what I saw. And then I started teaching from 17 to like 70 something years old. So I created a system so that nobody can get left behind. And it was one of the most funnest periods in my life, because I got to see all these different people from, I don't know what they were. They could have been rapists, murderers, whatever it was. They was all in there, and they really, for the first time, had life, because somebody was actually teaching them the game and showing them exactly what they needed to do from day one when they get out of prison. And you would be amazed. So I have hundreds and hundreds of students that actually took that program. That program still to this day is one of the most successful real estate investment programs in the prison system. And I've been gone for 7 years. Them guys picked that program up and kept teaching it. And some of my guys that were some of my best students that wasn't coming home anytime soon said, P, this got to live on. Like, what you've given us has been so powerful that has to live on. And then one quick story to let you know, the funny story is that, so I taught this program. I help all these people. I gave them structure. I taught them how to invest. They started getting out. I'm getting letters and things of how well they're doing getting out and stuff, right? So now I get out. It's 2015. I get out of prison. And I tell my cousin, I says, hey, let's go see the PO because I want to just get that out the way right now. So she said, okay. She took me to see my PO, which is a parole officer. I go see my parole officer. I'm sitting in there with my parole officer. And the funny thing is, she says, okay, Anthony, look at your record. It was immaculate. You had no problems. So you're extremely low risk. You only got to report to me twice a year. And you can just you can email me twice a year and you're good. She says, however, I got a question for you. She said, what are you going to do with your life? So the funny thing is that I helped all these people what they were going to do with their lives. I have been given so much all these years that at that time I really didn't even know what I was going to do with my own life, because while I was in prison, I was taking a lot of things. I ended up becoming a competent mechanic, learning how to use my hands. I always been business suits and stuff like that. I never really used my hands. I ended up getting my Water 1 and Water 2 license, which was only have a 40% pass rating. I passed it, on the first go round. So these were accomplishments. And that's the point of what I was trying to say. Like, you have to move on with your life. How can you better yourself? So these were things that actually gave me even more confidence and overcome things that I didn't think that I could even do, especially learning how to take engines out and fix cars and stuff like that. So all these things. So she says, what do you want to do? I says, well, look, I got my Water 1, I got my Water 2. I can probably do that. I think I can do that. I said, and I'm a mechanic, but I don't know if I really want to work on cars. So I'm just kind of thinking through it. Like, I don't even know what I really want to do. And I says, but you know what? In my heart, I would really love to open back up my real estate company and start investing in real estate again. She says, you know what? You're like the 10th person that came in here talking about that they want to invest in real estate. And she was like, and they got this plan laid out in terms of how they're going to invest in real estate. And they were sitting here going over this plan with me. And I was just like blown away. Like, they had all this stuff and they said they're going to buy these properties and how they're going to do it. And they said that they met this guy in prison and he was teaching a program about how to invest in real estate. She said, did you take the same program? I says, I think that was my program that I was teaching. She says, oh, wow, where are you? She says, so you was the one teaching them? I said, yeah. She says, well, look, Anthony, I want to commend you. She says, I have never seen anybody more ready to come out of prison in terms of what they were going to do for their lives from day one all the way until they actually succeeded what they wanted to do. They had 2-year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan. They knew exactly what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. And she's like, and I was blown away. So I want to commend you. You did a fabulous job with it. So, that really warmed my heart, because I was sitting there confused about what I wanted to do in my life. And finally, the big old brick fell on me like, okay, you got to get back into real estate. You got to open your company back up. I was going to fade to black and just, live my life, but, but I said, you know what, I got to open the company back up. So that's what I did. I opened my company back up.
You came full circle.
Yes.
Right
I'm
back
telling you,
around.
there's like that, all true stories. Everything I'm telling you, I was just like, I'm sitting here listening to her. I was like, wow. So it was almost like God said, hey, I got you, man. Just go on and do what you need to do. Here's your blessing. Go ahead and get back going, get back started, and be that pillar so that these guys, as they're getting out, they can continue to contact you, continue to get help, and continue to get advice. And that's what it's been for the last 7 years, man. And I got tons of amazing stories. One more that I'll share with you, which was really dear to my heart, was I got a State Masters Real Estate Academy. So it's an academy where I teach, inspire investors now how to invest in real estate and do all these things, right? And I teach, people all over the country now, because I kind of been able to open it up to the rest of the world. But my son one day called me. He says, Dad, and I've been trying to get him and say, man, why don't you just come into the course, take the course? He grew up around real estate most of the time, but since I've been home, he's been running around doing both of my sons. And I've been trying to get them to come into the business. And they just like, oh, he's one of them, since he's an artist and he's this, and that's great. You want to do all these things. But so he actually had kind of got into some trouble, was in a lot of trouble, especially when I was locked up. So now he was kind of giving back too. And he went to an event that was held by one of his old coaches to inspire, youth, to change their lives and all this type of stuff. So he went back to this event, him and my nephew, and he was at the event. And he, while he was there, he said that there was a speaker that was on stage. And he said he was telling everybody like how he started investing in real estate, how he was in prison for X, Y amount of years. And he said he met this guy in prison and it changed his life, and that he ended up, teaching him all these things. And now he's buying, commercial buildings, all these different things that he learned from this individual that helped change his life. And he was inspiring the kids that you can do anything with your life, and, and teaching them, right? And so my nephew, he said my nephew hit him, Jashawn hit him and says, I bet he's talking about your daddy. My son was like, oh, he's not talking about my daddy. Why you say he's talking about my daddy? He's like, I bet he's talking about your daddy. He says, whatever. So the event was over and he ended up crossing paths with the speaker. And he says, hey, you talked about that you was in prison and somebody was teaching you while you was in prison. He said, do you mind telling me who he was? What's his name? He says, yes, his name was Anthony Pierre. He said, that was my dad, because my son got the same name as me. He's Anthony Pierre the second. So he put out his ID. He showed him like, yeah, that's my dad. That was my dad. So he called me and told me about this. And it actually was one of my students. His name was Kevin, which I plan on in a couple of weeks doing an interview with Kevin. He's doing amazing out, and he was locked up in prison as well too. So that was it coming full circle. That kind of inspired me to just get back into the game. Also, create this academy, and then more importantly, the book is less about real estate. It's me in a compilation with me and 29 other authors, and it's more so about mindset shift, changing your mindset. I'll talk a little bit, but I don't go into a lot of strategies and stuff like that and teach because I think in order for you to be successful in anything in life, you got to first change your mindset. You got to change the way you think. You can go spend $10,000 for some type of a program, but if you got the wrong mindset, not only are you not helping yourself, you know what I'm saying, they can't help you either. So it's a process. So, we all deal with things in our lives and we're all going to have challenges. But you have to start looking at these challenges or looking at these obstacles as not obstacles. You have to look at them as opportunities. See, when you look at it as an opportunity, hey, I'm having problems with my marriage. But you know what? It's not it's an opportunity because guess what? If I can touch my husband's heart, if I can find a way to get him to see me, or I got my son that's struggling in school, it's not an obstacle. It's an opportunity. Now that means now it's time to go to work. What do you need to do to touch your son's heart to help him be able to see things in the way that you needed to see it so that way he can actually come full circle and come into the fold and now start to go in a direction that that he can go in and do the things that he needs to do. See, we look at things as obstacles. And what happens, guess what? They become obstacles. And then when we look at things from negative perspectives, so when we look at something from a negative perspective, it's going to give us negative results. The moment that you tell yourself you can't do something, then guess what? You can't do it. Why? Because your subconscious mind you just told him that you can't do it. So guess what? It's not going to work. The subconscious mind is what actually do the work for you. That's why when you go to sleep, sometimes you have a problem and you're thinking about how to solve it. You wake up with the solution sometimes. When you get up, you're like, oh, I know what I need to do. Why? Because your subconscious mind was putting to work because you was telling him that, hey, I got this problem. I need to solve it. And I'm wondering what I can do. You're not saying I can't do it. When you tell him you can't, it shuts down. If you say, hey, I'm trying to solve a problem. How can I solve it? What can I do? And you start thinking about it, not only during the day while you're in your conscious mind, but at night in your subconscious mind, it's going to go to overdrive. And it's going to start solving those problems. And that's one of the things that I learned is that there is nothing that you can accomplish and do as long as you learn to change the way that you think. Be kind to yourself. Be positive to yourself. Give yourself positive affirmations. Don't sit and tell yourself you can't do this. You a loser. You a failure. If somebody in your life is telling you that, then you need to remove them because they don't got it right. They got it all wrong. And not only are they hurting you, they're hurting themselves. So you need to remove them. And these are some of the things that I teach and help my students and stuff to understand that life is a blessing if you see it that way. But if you see your life as obstacles and problems and pain, and yes, you probably had a difficult lifetime. Yes, life, coming up as a kid, you might have had a difficult life. We all have got stories, right? But if you change the way that you think, not only can you impact and change your life, you can impact and change other people's life because other people need you. They need your story.
And I think, this has been amazing. It's incredible because, it is like you are version 2.0 of Anthony. Because like you said, when you before you had the experience of everything that you learned and went through in prison, which is incredible, everything that you did there, you were already great. You already had success. You already, were doing so many things that anybody in life hearing that part one would be, oh my gosh, tell me everything you did to be 1.0. And the shift that you made And I think this is really important to emphasize, because I think we all go through part of this in our journey and our transformation, is when it's not just about you. See, one of the things that we battle with is our ego, our pride, and, you know, not wanting that to be diminished. And when you get humbled, which certainly your situation put your feet on the ground and
Absolutely.
humbled you, just like other moments that you may look a little bit different for all of us, is it's not about us. When you make life bigger than you and what you're capable of doing to impact the people and the world around you, it changes the way you look at the world. It changes the way you do things, and it changes the purpose in how you walk in the world. And so that's exactly what you did. So when you came and you had these amazing stories, my favorite one is of your son, because see, a lot of times our family members, you could be the son of LeBron James, or the son, the son or daughter of this, successful person, and they see you as dad, or they see you as mom. They don't see you as the messiah of the NBA or whatever it is. But until somebody else sees you that way, then
Right.
they're like, oh, okay, maybe you do know a little something, something. And so, it's amazing how it takes sometimes us to be humbled, and us to be in a position of saying, I don't know everything. I always have room to learn and grow, what it can do and what it can do for others. The magnitude of what you're doing today is tenfold. And that's such a beautiful thing, because you used life is the school. You've never stopped learning. And
Yeah.
that's the reason why you're able to, persevere and help others. And I'm just so blown away and inspired by you.
A lot of people look at, life comes with these little dips. But I always tell people is like, don't be too overly dramatic and don't be too high. Don't ever be too high and too low. Don't take yourself too seriously. When you do that, what happens is, instead of your life being like this, and then you're on these highs and you're on these lows, which runs you crazy, your life would be more like this. You'll have a little bump here and then you'll be back up. You'll have a little bump there and you'll just keep going, because you have the right perspective in life and you understand that, hey, we live in a world right now that's extremely volatile, extremely crazy, and anything can happen. But as long as I'm willing to
Mhm.
continue to better myself and then continue to allow my pain to heal and help others by giving, you're going to find happiness. Why? Because the Bible says what? There's more happiness in giving than what? Than receiving.
Then
So
receiving.
that becomes the principle that we all live by. And if we do that, if I'm seeking, Daz, if I try to seek your advantage every day, and then you're trying to seek my advantage every day, it would be just a happy relationship, friendship, right? Because we're always, what do you need, Daz? What can I do? Anthony, what do you need? What can I do for you? Well, let me do for you first. Okay, well, you do for me this time, but I got to take care of you. It changes everything. But what happens is, we're in a world
Everything.
that gives this ideal that you got to take, 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 and it's all about me, 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 and I got to be the best. I got to be the best. No, you don't. You don't have to be the best at nothing. you know just keep giving of what you can give, and then that becomes your best. It's not equated by a dollar figure and how much money you got in your bank account. Can't nobody define you and say that you great, or that you're not a failure, or that you're a failure or anything. That's something that you allow. People will put their pain or put their frustration and their thoughts, and they'll try to throw that baggage on you. And what happens is we tend to grab it, put it in our book bags, and then walk around with it, and then keep letting people put it on and put it in our book bags until the point
Mhm.
it starts to weigh us down. No, you stay
It
away
does.
from the
And
big
it's
bad
funny,
thoughts.
yeah, it's funny to hear you say that too, because what I think about in this battle that we're in with, the take versus the give, is I always like to think about our eulogy. And at the time somebody, or somebody's plural, people are talking at your eulogy,
Mhm.
do you think they're talking about the things that you acquired? the amount of money that you were able to accumulate or spend, or nobody's saying that. They're
Mm-mm.
talking about who you are, your character, what you did, what you contributed in life, to the world, to those around you. And it's just a perspective that I like to put out there because it's it grounds us. You know,
It does.
we have to think about that. It's not how much you have, it's who you are and
You
what
know,
difference you're making.
that's a good point because the Bible makes it's a principle in the Bible where it says that a name is better than good gold and corals and silver, but the day of one's mourning is better than the days of one's birth. So you would think like, well, what does he mean by that? So the day of one's mourning, meaning that the day of a person's death, is better than the day
Mhm.
of one person being born. Now you would think, now we put all this, oh, birthday, I'm happy birthday, but the Bible says no. When you die, that's the most significant point in your life. Why? Because what kind of name do you have with other people? Also, I talked about earlier, fighting for your relationship with God. What kind of name do you have with God? Now, the principle basically is talking about first and foremost spiritual. So it's really talking about first and foremost your relationship with God. What kind of name do you have with God? And then on top of that, what kind of name do you have with other people? He says it's more valuable than gold and silver. So that goes to your point there, is that you're seeing that through life and wisdom and dealing with trials and tribulation. But he tells you it right in the Bible right now. Hey, don't worry about none of that stuff. Have a good name, impact, empower, change people's lives by giving, right? And then also establish a good relationship with me so that way I can help you. Because if you don't have a relationship with them, how can he help you? It's just like anyone, right? So it's a few
Mhm.
things, and then before we get out of here, one thing that I would like to share with your audience is just something that helped me a lot, and I
Mhm.
think that if anybody is dealing with anything in their lives right now and they're trying to figure out how do I deal with it, because we all have things that we're going through, and there's like a 5-step process that I teach, and that I think it helped me. And this is how I was able to really overcome. And I had to really meditate on this. And one of the things that the first step that you have to do is that you have to first and foremost be honest with yourself. So that's step one. You have to really be honest with yourself. You have to actually really be honest, and then take responsibility. Because being honest with yourself, you're going to find out that if your marriage is suffering, you had something to do with it. It wasn't just all your husband, or it wasn't just all your wife, and then be proactive. Why wait until you get divorce papers to fight for your relationship? To actually humble yourself and really realize that you need to do something about it. So it starts with being honest with yourself. Quit letting the elephant continue to walk in the room, and address the issue and move forward. Communication is the key in all relationships, whether it's business, whether it's in the family, and whether it's with the spouse. And sometimes it hurts to the core to communicate because of pain that you may be feeling, but you can never get over that pain until you communicate. A person needs to
Mhm.
know, and it becomes therapeutic for you. So be honest with yourself. Okay. So that's the first one. The next one is that what I had to do is I had to forgive myself. I had to actually forgive myself. I had to really say, you know what, Anthony, you know what, you made a mistake, and it's okay. And you know what, your kids still love you. Everyone still loves you. You just need to make sure that you utilize this opportunity to be a better person, so that when you get out, not only will your kids see that you might have dealt with trials, but they'll also see that no matter what you deal with in life, you can overcome them if you change the way that you think and you continue to impact and change your life. So you have to forgive yourself. If you don't forgive yourself, I don't care what you're dealing with your life. I don't care if it was childhood things that happened to you, things that you felt like it wasn't your fault. You was vulnerable. People took advantage of you. Whatever it is, you have to forgive yourself, because a lot of times it's the pain of your being involved is what is hurting you most, because I wish I knew, I wish I didn't. It's all about, so you feeling all this pain, and then you worrying about,
Mhm.
what's happening to you, And then what happens is it makes it difficult for you to forgive yourself. Because if you can't forgive yourself, you will never be able to forgive them, period. So you have to forgive yourself because it's you that's constantly entangled in it. So that's two. And then the third one is that I understood is that I had to adjust my mindset. There is no such thing as failure. If I would have continued to be in prison and looked at myself as a failure, I would not even be sitting here on your show today. I would have
Mhm.
spiraled out of control and probably would have got into the mix of what a lot of those inmates do. And they just say, I don't care. And they go in there and they selling drugs while they in there. They're getting into relationships with staff and just doing all kind of ill will stuff that's not benefiting them at all. Okay. So I had to change my mindset. So you have to change your mindset. You have to take and change your mindset. See, for the first one, forgiveness is releasing, you know what I'm saying, the real problem. Okay. And well, I mean, for
Mhm.
the second one, it's releasing the problem. It's actually releasing it when you forgive yourself. The first one, you actually are uprooting it. So, number one, you're uprooting it by being honest. Okay. You uprooting the problem. Number two, you know what I'm saying? Now you're releasing it. I'm gone. Remember, I talked about that book bag? You're taking that book bag off and you throwing it over in the corner and you gone. Or you throw it in the trash and you go on with your life, right? And then three, we talked about mindset. All it is reverse psychology. Trick yourself. And you're gonna see that, you know, trick yourself. That's what it really is. Trick yourself. Quit calling yourself a failure and tell yourself, you know what, you're an amazing person. You're a loving person. You know, you care about people, and then go out and act and do it. And then guess what? You're going to start believing it. Why? Because enough people are going to tell you that exact same thing. Man, Anthony, you're so loving. You're so caring. You're so this. Why? Because you're doing it. You're being who you really are. You're not. I've seen people that are so hateful, so evil, and that ain't even really who they are. It's a facade because of pain and things that they hold inside that's just bigger than them, and they think that that's the way to deal with it until you can peel all that
Mhm.
back. And then they're the most loving, the most giving person because somebody took something from them and they just feel like from here on, I ain't giving anything else. I hate people. I hate everyone. Right. So there you
Mhm.
that's three. So you gotta trick yourself. Reverse psychology. Change your mindset. Number five, you have to remember or identify your purpose. What is it that you really want to do with your life? What did you set out when you get up every morning? What are you doing? What are you setting out for? See, we stop dreaming. We stop going after what we want in our lives because someone told us that we can't be this or we can't be that. And see, we are naturally creative people. God said, I made you in my image. He made all humans in our image, in his image. And he's a creator first. He made time. He made
Mhm.
pain. He made everything, right? So we actually are creators too. So it's a natural thing. You actually suppressing yourself when you're not taking time out to be creative. So you have to recognize your purpose. So you may not know it right now, but you got to take time out, meaning that you have to remove yourself out of the problems that you have in your life. Okay, I owe millions of dollars in debt, or I owe this, or this is what happened. You have to remove yourself from the problem because when you get up every day and go into your problem, you're never going to be creative enough to solve it. You're just going to be getting beat up by it every day. You solve problems by stepping away and now being creative and
Mhm.
saying to your subconscious mind, how can I solve this? What can I do? And now you're taking time out each day, 30 minutes, just to be creative. And you're taking a pen and piece of paper and write it down. One of them ideas is going to solve the problem. But if you ain't taking time to actually be creative, you will never solve the problems. So identify your purpose. That's number two. I call it soul searching. Okay. And then the fifth one I'm going to leave with your crowd is that you got to take hold of your purpose. Now you got clarity. So take hold of it. Go get it and don't look back.
Mhm.
And don't let anybody tell you what you can't do. And just go for it. Action.
I love
Make
that.
it happen.
Yes, action. That's the key. That's the key. And it's, and it's changing that, like you said, mindset. So if you do tell yourself, I can't, you're changing that into how can I? and it's asking a different question so you can be in that creative space and that creative energy. That was the mic drop with those 5 gems right there. Like, if you just repeat that part of the podcast, just rewind it a little bit, replay it while you're driving in the car. That's all you need. Anthony, this has been such a magical time. I know that I'm going to sit with the things that you've shared, because it's, school, because that is one thing that we kind of revere and we talk about, and we encourage our youth, right, to go to school. The
Mm-hmm.
funny thing is that, like, and that's why I love that you talked about your experience in prison as school. Life is school. It doesn't end. So just because you're in an institution doesn't mean that is the time when you turn the switch off and stop learning. In fact, it is, to me, it's the test drive before the real drive, because it's when you get out is when you're applying the tools and you're refining the tools and you're adding tools to your toolbox and your toolkit to be able to do more. And I hope
Absolutely.
that today people can walk away feeling like they've sharpened or potentially even added some new tools to their toolbox. So I just appreciate you. And I have to ask you before we go, how can people reach you? They might feel like they have some follow-up questions, or they, might feel like they just want to see what you're doing, or they're like, he talked about real estate. I don't really know all about that, but now that he's talked about it, I kind of want to know more about that. Like, where could
Yeah.
they find you?
Oh, okay. Well, one of the easiest ways right now is that I don't know if your members are familiar with Linktree, but I do
Mm-hmm.
have a Linktree account. You can go to Linktree / APIERRE 1002. So you just go and type in the Linktree site, and then you put the forward slash and put A Pierre 1002. And what will happen is that it'll pull up. If you want to pick up the book, that you can go and do that. If you want to actually directly reach out to me, you can do that as well. It also has access to my Facebook group, so you can actually join a Facebook group. Every Wednesday, I do a free training on real estate and also life in general. I kind of tie it all together, so you can actually get that as well. And then also for real estate, for those who's interested in real estate, I do have a free master class on there where I teach 5 simple steps to making $50,000 or more on all your real estate flips. So you can have fun with that. And then, of course, you can reach out to me. I do a free 45-minute consultation. So if you're interested in just figuring out what you want to do with your life, and how you can implement and add real estate into that, so you can actually maybe create financial freedom, you can reach out to me that way too, and we can talk about a plan, and maybe put you together a 24-month plan, or a 5-year plan, or whatever it is, so that you can get out here and do some amazing things.
Oh my gosh. That is awesome. I do always include in the show notes information. So I will put the link tree so people can have that one link to access all the different ways to reach out to you, however they may be
Yeah,
interested.
and social
But
media is on there
I
too.
feel,
All my Facebook is on there too. So
yeah, yeah, because I've been on your link tree and I see all the little icons at the bottom. There's the
yeah,
Instagram and the Facebook and all the little things, and
yeah.
the book link. But this. I couldn't ask for a better way to start the year. I feel invigorated. This is all in the right time. I believe in the universe. I believe in timing, and this was well timed, because now, we have this reminder of living in our purpose. And I love leaving on that note from this podcast episode, reminding people that A, they have a purpose, and B, they should be moving in it. And how can we do that today? And how can we do that going forward? So thank you so much, Anthony. This has been awesome.
You are so welcome. It's such a pleasure. I was looking forward to coming on your show. You do such an amazing job. And again, continue to keep moving in your purpose, because this is what you should be doing. And you're like a light that's shining, and just continue to be bright and continue to help those that need it, because tons of people need your help and they need you out here. So continue to keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop the momentum.
Well, sure am not after today. I know that. So that's awesome. 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 Well, make sure to be following Anthony and check out his link tree and tune in again next time. See you guys later. A new year and celebrating episode 50. That is such a remarkable milestone for the Born Unbreakable podcast. Doing 2 episodes a week with the most incredible and inspiring guests. I couldn't be more grateful of the start to this year. So much so that I want to reward you as listeners for being here with me, starting off this amazing year. So if you've gotten this far in the first episode of the year, I am going to say the first 3 people that send me a DM to Born Unbreakable on Instagram or email me. So either way, you can email me, des@bornunbreakable.com. We'll get a little something, something. Okay, so we'll see who those 3 people are, and we'll get that going because I am in that spirit of giving. Anthony Pierre certainly put me there. What a story. What a story. So powerful. We are not failures because we continue to keep going. We don't stop. And you're not stopping. And you certainly are not stopping now because we're moving into greatness. We are moving into this next chapter of up-leveling your life. So with that, you're going to change your mindset today. You're going to tell yourself, how can I? And that is the spirit of how we're moving into this new year. What is the story that is holding you back? What is that barrier? We're going to eliminate that so that you can live, like Anthony said, in your purpose. And I also want to invite you, because this is something that I like to do at the beginning of every year, is to choose a word of intention. So I would love to know what your word of intention is. Feel free to share that with me and any of the platforms that you can reach me on. My word, dun, 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 reveal for 2022 is momentum. A lot of exciting things happening right now for Born Unbreakable and the other businesses that I'm doing. And momentum is such a fitting word for exactly how I feel and how I want to continue feeling as I move on into this journey. So with that, what do I always say? It is no different. You are your only limit. So take action. Make this a year of massive action. From this point, okay? This point right now, today, the first day of the year, January 1st. Think about where you could be 90 days from now. 90 days from now, at the end of the first quarter, what you can accomplish if you commit right now to put your mind to it. What would that look like for you? I'm so excited. I'm fired up. I can keep going, but then this podcast episode would end up being 2 hours long. And I'm not going to do that to you. So much more is in store. Continue to tune in. There's a lot of glorious things that will be happening in 2022, and I'm so happy that you're with me for the ride. Tune in again next time for another exciting, inspiring, invigorating, and empowering episode of the Born Unbreakable podcast.